I'd like to welcome all of us to the Happy Healthy Home discussion today, the 12th of December 2020. Our goal is to promote child and family development. We've been having these discussions at least once every month, and you can find previous recordings on our YouTube channel, #AllForJesus. So it'll be put in the chat box so that you can access some of our previous recordings, which we'll be making reference to as we come up with this discussion, because we've had a series of discussions as a run-up to this one. Today's topic for discussion is pornography and sexual violence. What should our children know? Thursday, the 10th of December, marked the end of the 16 days of activism against sexual violence. And this is our way of adding our voice to the call to protect women and children and others from sexual violence perpetrated against them. And today our focus is on children. I'd like to acknowledge the other team members of the Happy Healthy Home. Dr. Genevieve Inseg, who shared the opening prayer, is one of us. Reverend Dr. Edem Soko, who's not in the meeting at the moment, and then Eleonora Bafoje. So,
Dr. Gazy, are you there?
Yes, I had a network hitch. I pray that the network will be more stable in the subsequent times. So now to our discussion. Pornography has been peddled to be harmless, natural, and innocent. But those who have ever been addicted, they confess that it feels like there's no way ever to even be free from its grasp. The average age of introduction is 11 years. And many get introduced accidentally.
Me virtual meeting, maybe I'm not sure why. Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. You, that's it.
Unmute, Dr. Gazy.
Oh, sorry, I've been talking, sir. Forgive. Average age of introduction is 11 years, as we know from research, and many get introduced accidentally by stumbling across it. I said previously that pornography has been peddled to be harmless, natural, and innocent. But those who have ever been addicted confess that it feels like there was no way to ever be free from its grasp. Porn sites and streaming service actually form a shockingly large percentage of all online material. Almost 40% of all online material actually pornography. In 2017 in Ghana, 4 out of 10 children interviewed had actually viewed a sexual image online. Now, porn sites get more visitors each month than even Amazon. And we know that what we see actually impacts our behavior. Let me quote Matthew 6:22 and 23. It says that the eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? So children suffer shockingly from some horrifying sexual assaults on them. And indeed, in some countries where research has been done, the predators confessed to using pornography. It's important to have this discussion to learn how we can arm our children with knowledge so that one, they'll not fall prey to being abused, and two, they'll also not become abusers one day. And so on that note, I'd like to introduce our wonderful panel for today. We have in our midst 3 beautiful, strong women who have been at the forefront of preventing sexual violence across all ages. We have Dr. Angela Jomina Boaje. That face has been identified with this work. She's a licensed minister with ICGC. She's a lawyer, theologian, counselor, women's advocate. She's also the executive director of the ACT Foundation Ghana, which supports abused women and children with shelter, crisis interventions, and advocacy. She's married to Kwame, an international public servant. By God's grace, they have 4 grown-up children and 2 grandchildren. Then it's my honor to also introduce Dr. Elizabeth Banker. She's a specialist family physician, subspecializing in adolescent care, works at the Greater Accra Regional Hospital. She's the head of adolescent care in the clinic. And she also has a handsome little boy in her family as a son. So we have today, and we've had her before, a very beautiful, graceful woman of God. She's also a police woman, and she's by no means an ordinary figure in this meeting. She's a familiar face in this meeting, actually. She joined us the last time when we had a discussion on safety and security of children at this time. Acting Commissioner of Police, Reverend Laurentia Wilhelmina Akoli, the Director for Community Policing at Tesano, Ghana Police Service. ACP Reverend, we salute you.
Yes, Madam, I take sir.
Yes, please. I forgot to find out more about your family, but I know that by the end of the program, I'll have that information to share.
Sure.
And so,
Sure.
on that note, I'd like to go on straight to the discussion. And I want to find out first. That, well, Dr. Baga, can you tell us a bit about adolescents? You're talking about adolescents. Can you tell us a little bit about why they are the risk for pornography? And then if you can tell us a little bit what pornography is to start with.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gazy, and welcome to everyone. So adolescents, we've all been there. It's basically the transition between childhood and adulthood. So it's actually a process where the child is growing up to become an adult. And at each stage of the development, there are different things that are more prominent. So it can basically be divided into 3, where you have the early adolescent, the middle adolescent, and then the late adolescent. So the question that the early adolescent asks, or whose their life is all about, am I normal? So am I normal is, at that age, they are concrete thinkers. They are egocentric. They think about themselves. They are centered about different changes that is going on in their lives. They are less interested in what parents are doing. So this is the time that they're beginning to wean themselves off. And they have relationships with, same sex. So girls hang out with girls, boys hang out with boys. You don't get them mixing. And then they also at that time are finding that they want their privacy a lot. That's a time where you go to their rooms and they tell you should knock before you enter. And then they have idealistic goals, and then they don't have any. They lack control of their impulses. So whatever they feel like doing, they go ahead and then they do it. And then you get to middle adolescence. And middle adolescence is between 15 and 17. And this is where the question that they ask is, who am I and where do I belong? So in that stage, they are their thought processes become a bit more formal, and they are preoccupied with making their body look attractive. That's when they start pushing boundaries with their parents. There are a little conflict here and there because parents never understand because they've never been adolescents before, they think. And then you have peer activities. They would rather be involved with their friends. And then at that age too, they like exploring. They like to test the rules. Mom says, don't do this. And they try to push it a little bit and see, would you really be consistent in the rules that you've laid down? And, this is themselves. And we get to the late adolescence, which is between 18 and 21. And this is when, at that time, they have abstract thinking. They have logical reasoning. They're able to think, okay, what am I going to do with my life? What do I want to be when I grow up? What am I, working towards? And that's when they're also beginning to accept their bodies. I'm not so bad after all. And then they begin to accept their parents' supports and, finally think that, okay, what mom and dad are saying finally makes some sense. And with someone. And then they can set limits, they're able to compromise, what they want and what their parents want. And then they can be, working towards what they want to do in future. So this is basically the various stages that they go through. But we know that as adolescents are growing, we know that their prefrontal cortex lags behind. So it's their limbic system, which is the part that is responsible for feelings of pleasure and all of those things. That's what is growing faster than the prefrontal, which is responsible for logical thinking about consequences and things like that. So when you have adolescents being exposed to sexually explicit material, even though they may not really understand what the sexual stimulation is about, they have different natural response of pleasure, because that is how God created it, really. And so when you have the part of their brain that is responsible for pleasure and feeling good developing faster, they pick that up faster and not understand the consequences of what their action may be. So really, it's not that they are, deciding to be bad children or whatever. It's just that psychologically, physiologically, cognitively, they can't comprehend what some of these consequences are. And so when they get exposed at that time, it really becomes, it ends up having consequences that would last a while. So that's basically
Wow.
what it is with adolescents. I'm sure other questions will come up.
Yes, thank you very much. I think this is a very good introduction. So let's go straight to Dr. Angela. Dr. Angela, can you tell us, what is pornography? Is it just what we think we see on TV and on internet? Is there more to it?
I am in a meeting. What do you want?
Let me unmute. I'm unmuting myself now. Sorry. Hi, can you hear me?
Virtual meeting.
I think there's somebody else on the line.
Yes, please, we can help you. We can hear you.
Okay, right. So, thank you for the opportunity to talk about this very important subject. And thank you, Dr. Banka. That was a great intro. Well, I've been learning quite a bit about pornography since we last spoke, Dr. Gazy, because my area really is in gender-based violence, looking at domestic violence, other forms of gender-based violence, sexual violence, and I have not really taken time to look at the, where there may be implications of pornography in some of the cases that I'm seeing. It means, therefore, that I don't think I've seen one yet in which, you know, somebody was actually raped as a result of pornography and so on. But clearly there's a link from all the research and from all the practice points and so on. And we are no strangers to pornography. And so my little learning has told me that it is representation of sexual behavior in books, pictures, and in statues, motion pictures, other media like animation, video games, and so on. And it has a purpose, an intent to cause sexual excitement or sexual arousal. In these societies, despite all things that we hear, particularly of the Western society and so on, there are many, many groups of people who believe and oral can become addictive and it's nauseous. We know also that it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, particularly in the Western world, and it feeds the rest of the world, actually. And we may also care to know that there are several classifications when it comes to pornography. Some people have what they call soft porn, which means that you don't see as much aggression and so on in some of those images, but it's still pornography anyway. Then there's hardcore pornography that includes violence, aggression, and all kinds of masochistic behavior and so on. And then there is child pornography, for example, which is regulated heavily in almost every country, because it sort of involves sexual exploitation of children. So I don't think there's one country I know that doesn't have some form of a regulation or a law around child pornography. But I think that despite all the regulations around pornography generally in many countries, you would find that the advent of internet pornography, internet images, sexual images, has really undermined even the attempts at relating the pornographic industry across the world, because children, especially even adults, have become sort of captive audience. You are innocently surfing the net, searching for something, and these things can pop up if you do not have the kind of technology that actually suppresses them. And that's why a lot of children are reporting having seen, even in Ghana, 4 out of 10 children, that's a huge figure, having seen sexual images on the internet as they used it inadvertently. Many of them didn't intend to go there, but they find that they are being confronted with these images, people in the net, and decide to bring these pop-ups. And when their parents come around, they are able to take these things down, you know. And so there's a lot going on that we need to know and understand.
Thank you very much. I think that's
We have to
it's
unmute
unfortunate.
Dr. Gazy.
Yeah, it's unfortunate I keep on going in and out of this meeting. This very exciting meeting today. I want to know, ACP, have you arrested anybody for circulating pornography or anything? What is the reality like at your end?
Thank you very much. And a very good afternoon to all my sisters and brothers there. It is so very interesting when it comes to the law and the pornography. In as much as there is a law, it is a bit difficult to arrest people when they indulge in this porn sites. Like Dr. Angela just mentioned, inadvertently it pops up. And so people can make excuses out of it. But when you want to about married people, a lot of people personally have encountered, not too much though, but will tell you that the reason they get into porn is because of the nature of human dignity. So that one, the law is clear about it, but it's a bit difficult to arrest people because most of the time it is done in their closets where you cannot see, unless somebody reports that ABC has used porn on me to rape or probably to defile a child. But in as much as we are talking about it from this point, I will be clear to say that I haven't seen anyone being arrested because the person was watching. The fact is, you will not see. The second point is, if the person, somebody reports that person that he used porn to rape me, then the law can put a grips on you. Or that the person used pornography to defile their children, then that one, you are violating two laws, that is the rape and the defilement. But apart from that, if you're in your closet watching, so that is on the part of the law, but there is a law on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. ACB, what about occasionally we get people sending us child pornography, children sucking on another man's penis or all those things. Isn't the police supposed to be acting on all those things?
Very well, we are. Personally, I've received one or two before now, but follow it up. You will not get the perpetrators. It is when you get the perpetrators that it's looking at it from the point of law again, to be able to deal with those ages. If the person is below, I heard you mention something like that earlier on. If two people per the law are below the ages of 12 and they find themselves in those acts, it is necessary for parents to come in to advise, to counsel, to educate them, because those people are below the violation ages. But anybody who is above the age of 12 indulging in that, that is where the juvenile justice law comes in, because they're supposed to know. So we have to, going back to the Bible, that is where I will start struck to say, train up the child the way he will go. And when they grow, they will not depart from it. Like one of my sisters said earlier on, sometimes you want to visit a site, somebody sends you a link. Unfortunately, you click on the link and then there are porn sites on it. It's unfortunate. That is what really creates problems for the children as well. So if we are parents and we don't check what they watch, or if our children don't open up to us to tell us that mommy or daddy, I saw this, what are implications? Good forum for the parent to educate the child. But when the child will hide it from the parent, then we are treading on dangerous grounds. But from the point of law, children below the ages of 12, they are not liable. But above 12, they are liable. So we have to watch them, particularly like I said, somebody sent me a link. I opened it. It has to do with this TikTok something, and it was all in that. I said, wow, I deleted it immediately. But that is not what I wanted. So the children, most of the time, it's not their fault. It depends on which they go. But we should encourage them, educate them. When they see it, they should be curious to know so that we can help them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to talk about these porn sites, porn movies, now in cartoons, in video games, all over. What is, apart from the fact that these makers want to make money, what are they telling us about men and women? What do they want to portray? What are they thinking about? What is their mentality? And before any of the panelists coming to talk about this, I want to give a warm welcome to Mr. Emmanuel Nyakutete, who is a child protection officer with UNICEF. Emmanuel, if you are here, can you tell us a bit about what pornography is seeking to say about men and women? I heard one of us talking about objectification. What is it? Because they seem to have a certain mentality. Is Emmanuel in place?
Yes, please, I'm here.
All right.
Thank you very much. I just want to add that to what the earlier speaker said. There is a psychology to the whole thing. There is something we call mirror neuron. Mirror neuron is simply the reflection of whatever that you see, that you actually get yourself into it. It was actually discovered by Italian psychology when they were undertaking a research with monkeys. And they realized that when they give peanuts to them, they start to salivate. And at another occasion, when they were eating the peanut themselves, they saw that same part of their brain started working and became active. So that is how porn works on the individual minds, and the other they wanted to watch. Then they get addicted to it because it puts you are easily taken into the person's shoe. You are in and be looking at these things, even in our villages, and now if they can get it on the net, like we are saying. So it is an act that because they are doing it and they get that satisfaction if you are not able to control and maintain your focus. And like Dr. Awaji Jima said, it is a big industry because many people are patronizing it, and people who engage in it are getting money as well. And you know, where money comes into some of these things, then people will be ready to go in. The EP said, our children are exposed to, but we need to be able to empower them. Empowering them, like she said, let us be able to let the children know that these things are out there, because you cannot take them out of there. You cannot police them from getting there. But when you empower them and they say no to it, they then themselves will come out of the situation when they see it, because they know that it is not something that engaging them, and also forming attachment with them. If our children have developed secure attachment, then they can come and report to us. But here we are, most of the time, when our child or children report anything to us, we tend to blame them. Why did you go there? Why do you go there? We will not even listen to what they are telling them to the end. Most of the time, the end marks everything. But immediately they come, then the steadiness, when they know that when they come, because they want proximity, the child always wants to be closer to you. So when they know that things that will not make you happy are these things, then they will try to manage it and control it and not let you know. So we have to be able to befriend our children, whatever difficult the situation is. The farther they can come to us is even one way of overcoming the thing and sit them down and stop blaming them. When we are able to do that, we'll be able to control them. And like Dr. also said about the cognitive development, that is also key. The frontal, the prefrontal is the last to develop, and the emotional brain is the beginning, right from birth. That one begins to show. And most of the time, we are not taking the pains to manage that one so that we urge them, and especially at the adolescent stage, as she said, when you get there, they see challenges and risks for their friends and all them. So when they themselves want to involve themselves in sexual activity or any violence of that nature, they don't see them contracting any diseases, but they see that they manage their mind, which we call the self-regulation, the cognitive aspect, which from outside. And we can only do that when we befriend them and we know what is worrying them, what is on their mind, and gradually coach them. It's like managing the office, but we are not in the relationship and not screaming and shouting at them. So both psychological, natural, nurturing, and relationship is a key way of overcoming these things, because the moment the person is exposed to If care is not taken, then the mirror neuron comes in. It always reflects and gives him or her that enjoyment, and they want to go in there all the time until we are able to break that cycle by a way of coming out to build that relationship with them. It continues and on and on and on over.
That's interesting because we know that people who expose themselves to pornography also end up having a rewiring of their brain, and it makes them function at a level lower than their age. Well, that's another issue altogether. Because if I mean, you think about it, you see older men violating babies, violating children, and you ask yourself, what is happening? What is the person thinking about? We cannot attribute it to pornography, but I believe that we all agree that these are associations. There's an influence. We cannot say that it's not harmless. We cannot say that it's natural. We cannot say that it's innocent because the influence is there. But I want to know, is pornography devaluing sex and making women look like things that anybody can just grab and then have sex with, or what is actually the impact? Dr. Angela, do you want to come in to tell us something about this related to sexual violence? And as you are on it, tell us, is sexual violence perpetrated against women alone, women and children, or you've actually seen men also being violated sexually?
Okay, so let me take the last question first. Sexual violence can happen to anybody. It can happen to children, it can happen to women, it can happen to men. It's the most underreported crime across the world. And sexual violence includes all manner of acts. And maybe I might just make a reference very quickly to the broad definition of sexual violence, so we get an understanding of it. And it's possible broadly includes forced attempts to have sex or perform sexual acts against another person's will, when you attack the sexual parts of another person's body, when you threaten physical violence if an intimate partner would not comply with your sexual demands. It includes acts of rape, and rape has a definition in Ghana and has definitions in other countries. Defilement, that's defilement of children, incest, indecent assault, sexual harassment, sex trafficking, forced prostitution, sexual exploitation. We now have sextortion, revenge porn, online sexual bullying, and abuse. Even knowingly infecting a partner with sexually transmitted infections is a form of sexual violence. And when it's against children, it includes what Ghana knows as defilement. Other countries know it as statutory rape, okay? And inappropriate touching of a private part of a child's body, when you expose a child and when you are forcing or luring a child into performing sexual acts on your body and so on. So sexual violence is very broad, and it happens to boys, it happens to girls, it happens to women, and it happens to men. And clearly, from all the psychological understanding of pornography and even the very acts that are involved in pornographic acts and the production of pornographic material, you see that in many of the very, okay, so let me start with the pornographic material itself. In producing films, video games, and so on and so forth, a lot of what they call the hardcore pornography, even though I don't make a distinction, but others do, you find acts of aggression, acts of violence, and often these acts are perpetrated against the female, usually, in these portrayals. So you find that females are participating, as it were, as though in consensual sex, okay? However, they are performing the passive kind of actions, or it is happening to them. And those acts of aggression and violence that are included in those depictions are often being done to the female. So there's an aspect that is objectifying the female. There's an aspect that is being aggressive towards the female. There's an aspect that is saying that women are passive. passive recipient. And even when you find that the tables have turned and women are actually being the aggressors and so on, the portrayal is still done in such a way that the woman often becomes the objectified partner or object, let me put it that way, in the portrayals. So there's a part of the pornography industry that is very demeaning of women, of women, women's bodies, women's dignity, and involved in these acts and portrayals are being dignified in any way, okay? But the very nature of those acts appear to say to women that, you know, you are less than something, you are undignified, you can be treated as an object, you know, things can be made to happen to you. And so when children, even adults, imbibe this material and it acts on the brain, which is the most powerful, possibly the most powerful machinery or engine that God created, you know, then there's a tendency of wanting to act out these things through, you know, after there is a link. There is a link. Research has proved it, that especially adolescents that are exposed to this kind of material, especially the aggressive kind of porn, are 6 times more likely to have committed an act of sexual violence or sexual harassment, okay, against another person because they were exposed. And they are also very, very much likely to be dismissive of complaints that women especially make when somebody is touching them wrongly or doing acts to them that they don't like. The people who are exposed to pornography become somewhat desensitized and make those kinds of comments very easily. So there is a clear link between pornography and sexual violence. That is not to say that acts of sexual violence about because the people were involved in pornography. No, but that those people who are involved in pornography indeed are so affected by the likelihood that they will commit sexual aggression or violence is very strong.
Wow, this is really powerful to know. And for me, I think that the scary bit is innocent children meeting these things online and then not knowing what to do. And that is the reason for this discussion. Because we want to say that no, we want to talk to them about it before they even encounter it. Then when they encounter it, they know what to do, how to do it. Because then if we don't protect them and we are going to allow them to just navigate on the internet as is happening now, because our children are online doing all sorts of things every time and we are not able to police them all the time, then we have to be able to break that culture, that no sex culture that we have. We don't talk to our kids about sex, we don't talk to them about this, not, but because this is a very as I say, it's an extraordinary time that we are in. And so let's go to the meat of this discussion. How do we talk to our children? What should we tell our children? I'm happy to welcome Auntie Joyce, who is also an online child protection officer with UNICEF. Is Auntie Joyce on? I would like her to tell us briefly what she thinks about this issue. How do we empower our children with knowledge such that we protect them? Because if 40% of online material alone, as we have learned, is actually pornography, they are definitely going to meet it. But then they need to know what to do before they meet it so they can take a decision. But they're not going to meet it and then decide what they want to do. So if Auntie Joyce on the line.
Yes, I'm online. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, and thank you too for this great opportunity. It is a great learning platform, and I'm happy to be part of this meeting. And thanks to the earlier earlier speakers. In fact, it's been very insightful. What I would like to add is that we should all, as parents, be aware that now we live in two type of worlds. We have the physical world and then the virtual world, where a lot of us do transact a lot of, business, learning, entertainment, and with this COVID situation, a lot of our lives have been moved onto the online world. So as you are saying, it is very important for us to empower our children. As we empower them in the physical world and we guide them, don't do this, don't go here, it is not good to do this, it is not good to do that. In the same manner, we need to equip our children so that they will be able to be aware of the risk that the use of the internet pose to them. It is a very powerful tool that they can use to express themselves, learn, and everything. However, it is important for us to make these risks known to them. For instance, the way we guard our children against strangers. They should also know that, yes, there are people online who also look out for children, pedophiles, to abuse them. And so we should let them know some of these things. Again, even who do they accept as friends on the various platforms? We should let them know the risks associated with that, because there are a lot of friendship that starts online. It ends up offline, and then it tends to be abusive. So it is very important for us to nurture this rapport with our children and equip them with the basic skills that they need. Definitely let them know that they need to be smart when they are using the internet. And SMART is an acronym that we teach all our children. And let me see if I can remember it offhand. And the S means that stay safe online by observing certain rules. The M is say don't meet up with people that you have just met online. A is for don't accept friends or files from strangers or people you do not really know. The R is for them to know that not all information online is reliable, and so they should check with a trusted adult if they are not sure of it. And the T is tell. Tell a trusted adult, tell somebody if you have some uncomfortable experience online. And luckily for us, the Ministry of Education has dedicated certain reporting portals that if you encounter any cyber security incidents, including online abuse, you can report to. What readily comes to mind is the 292, is the short code that you can send a text and you receive a response, or you can call 292 if you encounter. They have a WhatsApp number, they have a web, but I can't remember it offhand. But the 292 is the number that they can call if they encounter any cyber incidents. And they work very closely with the service. Luckily for us, just last November, the cyber security bill has been passed into an act, and it has stringent provisions for dealing with some of these online abuses that were not very strongly prominent in our law. So in fact, we are doing a lot around that space, but we should engage our children on some of these risks so that they are aware that they can get the needed support. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much, Auntie
I hope
Joyce.
I was online.
Yes, you are online. We heard you very well. And so the number is 292 to call if you have any cyber attacks that you need to report. That's very interesting. I didn't know there was even any such number. So this is very helpful. I want us to go to the main issue today. What should we tell our children? We are dropping bits and pieces of it, bits and pieces of it. Actually, we know that when you're talking to children, it has to be age appropriate. So let's say that this child is 4 years old. Can we start talking to this child about pornography? And what are we telling the child at this age? Now run up to 8 years, run up to 14 years, run up to 18 years. What are we telling them? What should they know? A child of 4 years, I don't think it's important to tell the child the implications, okay? Explaining it, like the mental health implications, explaining the way that the child may not even understand. So I don't know who's going to go for the the first catch. What should we tell our children? How should we tell our children? The child sees a pop-up inviting them. Recently, I opened my email and they said, "Oh, how to use technology to make money or something."
Okay,
As soon as I went there, it was something else. Yes, please.
First of all, it's very, very important for parents to know that children must be spoken to. They must be taught. And I think it also helps that Dr. Angela spoke about, that we know how women are being objectified, so to speak. And it's sort of part of our culture. So if parents are able to understand that this is not acceptable for us as adults, and definitely not for children, I think our attitude will be a little different. The problem I have sometimes is that when kids have been exposed or have been violated in any way, what I don't like to hear is "yen if you ask them," and that's the end of it. We know from studies that children, even at 2 to 3 years old, who don't even understand that sexual stimulation is wrong, have psychological consequences later on in life. So if the parents are able to understand that, this is wrong and this is not acceptable on any front, that would help from the beginning. And also, as far as a 4-year-old, I think it's important for parents to teach the child your body parts and know which parts can be touched and which parts cannot, and who can touch you and who cannot touch you. So that would be a part. And nobody touches you, you tell your parents, you tell an adult, and it's not acceptable. This is your space. When it gets to, even when you're giving them baths, when it gets to the time they need to wash their private part, you can tell them to wash it themselves and tell them that it's for you alone. Nobody touches it. You are not supposed to touch anybody else's and let no one touch yours. And you are not supposed to see anyone's. That's why they are under clothes. And it's called private. So if you are able to explain that to a 4-year-old, I think that would go a long way.
And so to add to that, I think that then we can even relate to the fact that, oh yes, our children shouldn't watch pornography because then they'll be looking at somebody's private part, isn't it? And we are saying that it's a private part. Nobody should look at yours. You don't look at any other person's also. And so we are dissuading them from watching it because we have taught them that private parts are actually private. Dr. Angela, we have to teach our children what no means. We're in this country when we heard that one of the popular actors or artists, I don't want to mention his name, had actually violated a child. And then the argument was, oh, what if she consented? And then she said, no, what is the law saying exactly? People say different things all the time. But we have to teach our children that no means no. Where does consent start and where does it end?
How old was the child? Can you remind me?
Sorry.
How old was the victim?
Yes, so I think it was between 16 and 18.
If you remember.
It was between 16 and 18.
Okay, right. So, well, consent is a big around Basically, in plain English, consent is I'm giving you permission to do something, or I'm not giving you permission to do something or the other, okay? And it has different connotations, and there's informed consent and all of those things. You know, even when you're going to conduct a research, you need to take the consent of the person that you want to interview. All of those things, there are different forms of ways in which consent comes into our lives. But when it comes to issues around violence, particularly sexual violence, in Ghana, the consent laws are made to protect children. So, for example, anybody under the age of 16 cannot be said to have consented to have sex. If you're under age 16,
Okay.
you cannot be said to have consented. So anybody who violates you sexually has actually committed what will be known in other jurisdictions as statutory rape. So if it comes to what the law calls carnal knowledge, okay, where the person actually has sex with a child, whether they are female or male, that person can never use the consent clause to say, oh, the person was consenting to the act, so I can get away with it. That's something we should all understand. Even if a 15-year-old, 15 years, 364 days old person comes to you, takes off all their clothes, puts themselves on their bed and says to you, please, Mr. Man or Mr. Teacher or whatever, Madam Teacher, come and do this to me, and you do it, you will be held liable, because no child under the age of 16 can consent to sex. Now, when the law says you cannot consent to sex, it does not mean that, therefore, when you are 16, go and have sex. That is something that confuses people a lot, because they say, why do we have consent to marriage at 18 and consent about sex at 16? And so we should sort of put it all together. Well, there's a policy reason for that. And if we went into that, it would take a long time. But the whole point is that when the law says a child cannot consent to having sex under 16, it simply doesn't mean that when you are 16, go and have sex. It simply means that if sex happens and it was done without your consent above age 16, the person who has been accused can say that you consented to it, but it will come under investigation and under inquiry by the courts to see whether there was actual consent. So from age 16 up to 800 or age 200, you know, if somebody violates you without your consent, the person, you can say, I was violated sexually without my consent, and therefore that is a crime, for example, rape. And the person can say, no, you are my girlfriend. No, you know, you came into my room, you know, that is their defense. It will have to be up to the law courts, the investigatory bodies, and the defense lawyers to sort that out. So please, nobody should think that the law is saying that when you hit age 16, go and have sex because you can consent to have sex. I think that clarity should be made known today. So consent is a very, very important part of our laws. And even as an adult, even in marriage, okay, and here, you know, I put on my pastor's cap. St. Paul was very strong on the fact that we should honor each other's bodies. And even when it comes to sex, we must adore in a proper marriage, in a proper way. Peter says the marriage bed is undefiled because there are two consenting adults. There's something that is respectful, loving about the act of sex that gives dignity and brings joy into the heart of. So anytime one person is deciding to and who they are as a human being, there's something wrong, even if they are married. Even if they are married, how much more if it's a child? Okay? Even when married, even when you have a ring on your finger, the act of sex must not be forced, you know, which was referred to me by a pastor, where a couple, one of partners, unfortunately, it was the husband, copied that are going on in the porn movie. And the lady says, look, I can't consent to this. Number one, it offends my sensibilities. It offends my Christianity. And it's very difficult for me to see it. You have, in a sense, violating the principles I stand for. The husband wouldn't take it. It became a big problem in marriage. You can't even force your desire to watch pornography on your partner. Okay, so these are boundaries that we should set and understand, even as adults, how much more for children who are vulnerable and who need the protection of adults.
This is getting interesting, because I'm being tempted to ask, okay, so what do I do? I'm in such a marriage. What do I do? Who's going to ask something?
Dr. Gazy, that's another subject for another time.
Yes, but quickly, what should we do?
Let's concentrate on porn and sexual violence.
Well, I'm sure ACP Reverend also wants to tell us something about that.
Thank you very much for this insightful discussion, Dr. Angela. That was very deep. I agree with you of the 16 and 18 and the below 16. She has very well cleared it. But for me, on my sensitization tour, I tell my girls and boys that in as much as the law says 16 years is consent, once you are living under my roof as a parent, you have the full protection. The two of us cannot go into the same business as in sexual business. A child, for that matter, for me, is laughing. A child, for me, is a child. This discussion has come up, Dr. Angela will agree with me, on several discussion tables, that if our children are 16, she will give consent to. We send children to school to go and learn, study, and become the beautiful adults we want them to become. Then the law says at 16, you can consent to sex. Consent can bring anything that is dangerous to the children we have, because they are our leaders tomorrow. Now let's come back to parents. We put on different hats. I believe that in as much as the law has made it possible that 16 plus can consent, this is where parents will stand thick and tall that, my child, let me train you on the basis of morality. Your future is to go step by step into a dignified adult life. If on the way issues of this nature are coming up, then the mind of the child also is being derailed in a manner. It is accidental, like said earlier on, inadvertent for the children to enter into the porn world because of the studies, because of the researches. But like I said earlier, sometimes if you befriend your children, whatever they see, they will tell you. But where you become so hard on the children, even when they are seeing things that they don't even understand, like Dr. Banka said, they are fighting certain things on their own. If you, the parent, don't support them, then they go, hey, to do certain things that they don't have to do. But they need our support. They need our guidance. They need our directions, so that whatever they see, they can come back to us. As for the law, it is there that 16 is an age of consent. But I will stand to agree with all parents that we need to be vigilant on our children. We need to guide them to adulthood. Consent will not save them when it comes to their future being cut short. My take for now.
Let me just come back on this just slightly, because I agree with Laurentia completely about the kind of relationships that we should have with our children, and the fact that the closer we get to our children, the better. We should also recognize as a country that there are many children who are having children. And so we need as a society to make arrangements for those kinds of children who are not even adult enough to have children and to even train them, so that we can, as a society, will help them to also nurture their children. And that is why one of my desires is always to see a lot more people in this area of work, no matter who you are, a market woman, a doctor, a lawyer, a trader, a carpenter, an artisan, whatever, that many more people are getting interested in issues around child protection, in issues around social justice, so that for those who cannot speak for themselves, those who do not have parents or have parents who are even mature enough to take care of them, for those who are voiceless, the rest of society can be a covering for them in terms of what we do, in terms of our education, reaching out to them, counseling them, drawing them, the kind of work that Dr. Banka and other people do, you know, for other children who are not so fortunate to even have parents. Now, a little bit about the consent thing. Once again, I want to emphasize, the law is not saying go and have sex. I think that has really become a problem in education, because I think the messaging of the law, which has been put out in education, that the law is saying go and consent to sex. No, it is for the purpose of evidence. The one who is being accused, saying that you consented, and so I cannot be imprisoned for having sex with you. So if we don't look at it from the point of view of how the law approaches it, when it comes to a case, we will always think that the law is saying go and consent to sex. In fact, if you look at our Children's Act, it places a grave obligation on parents and people acting in loco parentis, that is guardians, foster parents, and so on, to see to it that their children do not face violence, endangerment, harassment, many kinds of violations that you can harm, injury, and in fact, it even has sanctions for parents and people acting in loco parentis who place or do not work on their children or train their children or guide and guard their children in such a way that they lead them into endangerment, into violence, into all manner of things that harm and injure and threaten the children. So it is important to put this in context so that we won't let people think the law is saying go and consent to have sex or have sex. Okay, but rather it is when somebody is accused and the person says, you consented, so you cannot accuse me. That is where the law is coming from. But I know that that's a messaging that has gone out a lot in the society. Even though I've been trying to correct it, I think it's time for policymakers to find a way of rationalizing, because I don't think that anybody should be having sex even before they are married anyway, you see. So, but I think there must be a way in which society clarifies this in a way that does not harm children and think that the law is saying from 16, go and have sex because consent is there. That is not the import of
so this underscores the reason why we have to be explaining some of these things to our children, because if you don't, and somebody is the one doing the education, I mean, imagine, then your child is learning from somewhere that, oh, now that I'm 16 years old, it's okay. But then if you understand the implications and then you are telling your child, it's a better thing to do. I think that a lot of us are afraid. Should I tell my child about this? Wouldn't it make my child curious?
Absolutely.
Wouldn't it destroy my child's innocence? I think that's the issue about this whole sex education. What do we think, panelists? What do we think? Are we destroying their innocence by sharing some of these things with them? Dr. Banka, what do you think?
I don't think so. And as has been said, I think I'd rather be the one to teach my child than to have my child be taught by somebody else, because we all have different moral compasses. So it's very important that we take that step. And, you know, I've had different situations at the clinic where, you know, adolescents come, and then after talking to them, I ask, well, with parents there or whatever, I mean, as appropriate, to talk about, you know, sexual reproductive health. And the parents would say, oh, no, she's too young. Like, she's 13, she's not too young. She's 16, she doesn't know anything. She doesn't know anything. You know, there's so much going on. There's so much going on that parents, we need to know that, you know, our children are learning. You think you are protecting your child. Okay, I'm reducing screen time. You can't be on the phone for so long. You can't be on your tablet for so long. But they are going out there. Other kids, other parents are allowing their kids to get on, and they are learning and teaching your kids. But once your kid is grounded in your morals, when they go out there, they would rather even influence those other kids who don't have that at home. So I think it's very important that we do it ourselves. We shouldn't allow other people to do it.
Anybody want to top up? Should we share some of these things with them or not? For instance, this consent thing.
Thank you for that. I think it's, yeah, I want to come in a little. I think it's very important for us to let them know and understand. In our day and our time, it's not all parents who are deep into this cyberspace like our children. Most of us will agree that the children even come back to teach us certain things when it comes to the cyber area. What they see and what we see, there's a big difference between the two. So it is important to let the children know the dangers when they go into the cyberspace. For instance, my mother, in growing up to age, even when I became an adolescent, never taught me any part of my private part. They would say you're girl or your boy or you're down. And when it comes to the law in this day of rape and defilement, if you should go to court and say, my girl, what is my girl if you have been defiled? You should mention your private parts, that the investigator or the prosecutor will know that this is exactly what you are talking about. But if you don't mention, which we don't give the opportunity to our children to know, then when issues happen, they cannot describe appropriately which part of the body has been touched or has been violated upon. For me, I will say that right from age 4, when they start growing, we should start teaching them, importantly, the body parts. Then we begin to explain the implications, like Dr. Banker said earlier on. Their private space is their private space. When they begin to understand and know the implications, then they can quickly relate to parents if there is anything going wrong. So the bottom line is, for me, I agree that we should teach them as they grow to know the space in which they are.
Wow. I may want to add a bit to what Dr. Banker and Auntie Laurentia has said. They've said so well. In order to be able to teach them, we ourselves as parents have to learn. I mean, I have grown up children now, so, you know, I can say my last one is 24. What else is there to learn? But you see, once you have children, it never stops. Now I have grandchildren, and I know that my own children are having some of the issues I had in discussing some of those issues with them. And so as a grandparent, I still feel obliged to know enough to be able to guide not only my children if they are talking, you know, as we're talking with each other, but also to help them with my grandchildren if they come visiting and all of that. And I've realized that Ghanaian parents are notoriously ignorant. Let me put it that way. I'm not saying we are ignorant intellectually or whatever, but when it comes to the cyber issues, you know, sometimes the children laugh at us. When, oh, teach me how to do this, they are laughing at us because we don't even buttons, find out what is happening, know the WhatsApps and all of that is going on in society. Instagram and all of those things. But we need to learn. For as many of us as are educated, even the not so educated, market women and so on, they are using it for their trading and so on. We need to encourage more parents to become interested in these things so that they can teach their children and guide the younger generations. But I also add that as Dr. Banka said, you need to let your values be passed down to your children. I think that is completely true, and I agree 100%. I'm thinking about some of the people that come to, for example, where I work, that end up sometimes in our shelter for those children, is that if they are found by someone who has a warped sense of understanding of these issues, you can be sure that they will teach them things that you don't want them to know. And I tell you that in our country, there are people and organizations that are pushing certain ideologies and so on and spreading it around in all manner of ways. Some of us have to wake up to that reality and become parents to children who have no parents. In that sense, of children around your community, in the school where your children may attend, in your church, your Sunday school is a whole mission field to be able to inculcate in children there who may not have your sophistry, your middle class background and so on, because they are there. And if we don't get them, other people will get them and put them on a wrong route. And that is my take in terms of what the added work that I'm giving to all of us to start looking out for children who care of them, have food to eat, somewhere to sleep, and that's the end of it. We must be interested.
Okay, so quickly, I've got 2 questions to ask. What do we do about children who attempt to assault our children? I mean, a few times you see this 14-year-old has given this child some abrasions because they're trying to penetrate and all that. What does the law say? What do we do with these children? Do we report to the police? How does the police deal with it? Are there any age brackets for such infractions? ACP, what is in your corner?
Yeah, thank you very much, Doc. I think I said earlier on that when it comes to the law, the children below 12 are not viable with the crime. But it is important for us to know that it is what the children see that they actually practice on other children. There was a video that the domestic violence unit, 2 young children, I think 5 and 6 respectively, they were playing mommy and papa. And playing mommy and papa, they were putting their fingers into one another. One tried to sleep on stock, and I said, no, it cannot be. We tried to locate, but it was within a village setting, an indication that the children are left on their own to see something. That one, for instance, has to do with the parent, because that is negligence per the law, because you've left the children to be on their own and the parents should be taken responsible. When it happens in these cases, counseling is the best thing you can give them, an education for those parents who are being irresponsible to line up, divinely line up, because the future of those children belongs to you. But when it comes again to the above 12, that is where the juvenile justice comes in, because they must know and they must live within the confines of the law. So I'll say importantly here that in as much as we'll be looking at them as children, we need to always talk, like Dr. Angela just whether you have a child or not. Once you have a child or not, you are a mother. Are we okay? hear you
audio
okay?
is muted in this background.
Nice. Mute Jedami.
Yeah, thank
Okay.
you.
So I was trying to say, can I?
Yes, yes, please.
Okay. So I was trying to say here that, like Dr. Angela said, whether you have a child or you don't have a child, as Ghanaian, the extended family system is there. It's not every parent who will be close to their children at a given time. So if I happen to see something with a child whose parents are not close, it's not morally right for me to even say that I am not the mother. It is wrong because you don't know where that child will be tomorrow. So it is important for all of us, looking at it from the parental side, from the legal side, moral side. We just have to be sharp on children, help them, assist them to occupy the right space so that tomorrow, if I'm not there, I can be proud to say that I helped Sister A or Brother B to be who they are today. So we will look at the law, but morally, we have to marry it with the law to ensure that the children are put in the right space for their better future. Thank you.
Yes, I think that's a great point there, because no matter what, they are still children. But what if the child is older than 12 years? You didn't add that, please. So this child is older than 12 years. What happens to the child?
Older than 12 years, they are liable to crime.
So the child can be charged in court.
Yes, that is why they are taken to the correctional center when they commit crime after 12. Either you are taken to the postal institute or to the social welfare where they are giving some education. But after 12 years, you are liable and the law will take up on you.
Well, in winding up, before we take your take-home messages, and I'll try to summarize all that we have said for the sake of those who joined at some point. I'd like to find out, Dr. Banka, what is the impact of sexual violence on our children, mentally and physically? And I'm sure that we'll add some others. Because when it comes to pornography, what the literature also says that children who are depressed, who are anxious, can also resort to pornography as a way of dealing with it, which actually underscores what we've all said, that we really need to have a relationship with our parents, with our children, that makes them easy to communicate with us. I think there was a video circulating on WhatsApp recently where a mother was talking about the child that committed suicide, and said that the child had changed, the behavior had changed, but she didn't know what was happening. She thought he was just being a difficult adolescent. And next thing, she found that the child had committed suicide. And it was after the suicide that she found that the child had been abused. And so the child was trying to deal with the abuse, but didn't know what to do. And the mother wouldn't even give him space to speak and everything. He ended up committing suicide. So it's like a cycle. We know that pornography can start from a place of depression and anxiety. What is the mental health impact as well? And yes, I'll be taking the comments in the chat shortly.
Okay, so as has mentioned before, studies have even shown that cannot even know that it is wrong. Later on can develop psychological consequences from being abused. And first of all, it causes the victim to have a distorted view of what sex is all about. And it leads to self-worthlessness, having a lack of self-esteem, suicidal ideation. So it's not strange that this happened. And also it makes them not trust adults, or even it can even be affect their future relationships, not trusting their partners, not trusting adults because of what has happened. And they can have an abnormal view of what sex is all about. So what they see, the only education they have is what they see on the pornographic movies or material. So that's what they expect to see. And in the end, they can cause a lot of problems in relationships. So it's very important. And as you've said, we need to be listening to our children. We need to talk to our children, get to know our children. So if something comes up, they will be able to, and we have to be observant. Sometimes a child may, there may be something going wrong. They may not, know how the parents may react to it, even though you may be free with that child. But then you can pick up little cues and encourage them to speak with you, because then they can, you can get in and understand what is going on. Sometimes, people can, for example, an example I can give is maybe a 15-year-old or maybe a 13-year-old, 12-year-old, all of a sudden starts wetting their bed. And you don't know why, or why are you doing this? Did you eat too much? You shouldn't have drank so much. Well, one of the causes is sexual abuse. So you don't just, brush it off that, oh, it's one of those things. You have to know your child, know what is going on, try to find out what is happening in their lives. And then you ask. And if you are very transparent with, how your body works and all of that, they will feel free and to be able to come to you and discuss these things. So that is very important. Communication is very important, and let's take our children seriously. Let's be very observant, because they may be struggling with, things that they don't know how to communicate with us. They have, all of a sudden, their behavior changes, their grades are falling, they become aggressive, they become depressed, they become truant. You don't understand why. Rather than, start by accusing and punishing, find out really what has changed. So that's my submission for now.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And so we'd like to take your take-home messages briefly. Dr. Angela, what do you want to tell us before we go?
Okay, so yeah, briefly, I'll just want to sort of reiterate the point that there is a link between pornography and sexual violence. It's clear. Pornography says a lot about what society thinks about us as human beings, men, women, and women, boys and girls relating to one another. And it's very important for us to draw close to our children. As much as we expect their obedience and respect, it is also expected of us to love them and to draw them close. I think that's the example that God the Father, in fact, God the Trinity does for us. And that is our example, the example that we should also be to our children, because it is in building this trust that they are also able to tell you what they are exposed to, what their fears are, what their thoughts are for the future. All of these things are very, very important. Lastly, for those children who appear to fall out of the cracks in our society, and there are several thousands of children, I think that it behoves us as adults in our society to start looking out for them actively. It's not enough to be in your little corner with your little family, your little car, your little house. It is important for us to actively begin to look out for some of these children and see how best we can help them. If you don't know what to do, approach a DOFSU. They get some of these children, they know where they are, and they can tell you their needs. It can help you. Approach the Department of Social Welfare, approach a child-based organization who know where some of these vulnerable children are and what can be done to help them, and get involved.
All right, thank you very much. I'll be in the meeting. He's made some very interesting comments in the chat, and let me read. Or you'd like to speak to us directly?
Not necessarily. I'm just raising some points in terms of what has been said. I mean, it's a very interesting discussion. I've learned some stuff myself. I mean, I have children who are 11 and 14 myself. So
Volume, please.
one boy, one girl.
And
So,
raise the voice a bit.
sorry, is that any better?
Yes. Awesome.
Okay. Okay. So in terms of learning how to speak to the children and discussing, especially that sort of age group where you are discussing what the definition of adolescence, pre-adolescent, well, mid-adult, what you said, early adolescent, mid-adolescent, and then late adolescence. There's a lot of information that was given there right at the beginning that is quite helpful to understand the behavior of children, which you could put down as, okay, this is the norm, this is what to expect. Outside that, with a degree of statistical variance, then you can more or less query more what's happened in the life. And because you're not expecting that kind of behavior, like you're saying now about like wetting the bed for no reason, becoming more aggressive, that sort of thing. So it's I mean, hopefully this will actually be recorded and released online so that people will understand, because a lot of these things we learn by experience, and there's no parenting handbook for us to go refer to. Okay, what is this, and what should be happening. The babies are mothers help us, or our parents sort of help us to get the babies suckling, blah blah blah. They need to drink the milk from the breast, and they need to latch on, and blah, and they go through the terrible twos and all the way. And then when it starts becoming like teenagers, pre-teenagers, it's like, oh yes, it's that time when things start changing in their bodies. That's what happens. And basically that's the explanation for parents, and okay, they'll grow out of it, doesn't matter. Whereas discussions like this are very, very informative, especially when you have experts online, stuff like that. Now, coming to the questions I was asking, one person said that, for instance, there's 40% of Ghanaian children have been exposed to sexually explicit or pornographic adult material online. And then someone also said of the information on the internet is pornographic. And I'm like, okay, I can understand the 40% of Ghanaian children, but honestly, 40% of the internet, that's a whole different ball game. So I was looking online to see what the information was, because I'm not exposed to 40% of stuff on the internet, and I do a lot of internet searches. That aside, we have. I'm trying to list all the stuff that I've sort of said in the questions or the queries that I've raised.
Sure. Yeah.
I live in the West, so I'm in a different, ball game. So if I want to be intimate if I wanted to be intimate with my wife, I would have gone into my bedroom, probably locked the door, possibly, or left the door. At least close the door. You were talking about villages and stuff. I mean, you got a hut with like one chamber and hall, and everybody sleeps in it together. In the middle of the night, something happens. Maybe not. The kids are exposed. So it's not so easy to say, is it porn? No. It's lovemaking. Yes. In a loving relationship, economic circumstances, children are exposed to, shall we say, intimate acts that maybe they shouldn't be exposed to. And you were talking about the villages. How do you take that out of, how do you put that in context with the children? And then there's also, in terms of, it seems that the baseline of the discussion has been based upon biblical principles, right? Again, in the West, I've been a Christian for a good 40 years. I know my Bible almost inside out. I know what should be done, what should not be done. I'm not saying I'm perfect from any stretch of the imagination, but what I am saying is the assumption that everybody is having is a mature Christian that's an adult is a very dangerous premise to go on, because the adults of today, as you say, some of you are grandparents, don't have the same moral values or baseline or from a biblical perspective, plumb line to go by. And so everybody, as again, a biblical quote, everybody is doing what is right in their own eyes. So you have the issue where sexual promiscuity, for want of a better word, is becoming the norm of today. Not only in Ghana, but
Ghana.
mainly in the West. I don't know what what you call it, so the numbers are. But in the West, I mean, I was just looking when Dr. JC was talking about, you know, the figures. I had a quick look online, and it was saying that, you know, like 85% of women and 13% of men in the States. I posted it on the chat, so you can have a look at it if you want. There was a figure there from the statistic from Statistica from 2019 February 11th of February, to say that, you know, this number of people are involved are watching porn at least once a week, and I'm like, whoa, hello. And this is, I mean, there's some of us in there. I mean, we know that Ghana, we've got a high expats community, returnees, all coming back into the country. Guys, we have to wake up. How do we educate not only our children, but ourselves? Because it's what we pass to our children as to what is right and what is wrong. And if we don't pass, if they don't have that biblical background, then the moral compass is way out, way out, because now the norm is no longer the norm that we had when we were kids. All right, or at least let me speak for myself. When I can tell you for free, and also the accessibility to some of this stuff is a completely different ballgame. So anyway, instead of taking up all your time, you get a gist of what I'm trying to say. We need to answer it from that perspective, and we need to look at it from how do we influence down our adults to influence our children? How is it going into the educational system? What percentage of us are really Christians, eating meat rather than still drinking milk after 20 years, and not just following? I mean, you've seen stuff with pastors in churches. I mean, in my book, that would be classed as pornographic right there. I mean, as one of the speakers was saying, she doesn't value anything from soft porn to hard porn to medium porn or whatever it is. It's all porn. And some of the stuff they do in pastors do at the front of the church, I'm like, guys, come on, this is not on. But however, it's done. What do we do about it? And I think we need to address it from the roots. The children are affected, but we need to start from where they're being affected, because it's the adults that are impacting the children. And if we don't start impacting the adults, we're not hiding to nothing. The education system is something else, but again, there has to be an integration between the families, the homes, the adults, the education system. But that's my opinion.
Wow.
And, I'll leave it out there for you to discuss.
It's well taken. It's well taken, because if what do we expect the adults to tell the children if they don't have any information themselves? So I think, yes, the churches have a duty to play. The schools as well, they have to get up and do something. But of course, we've established the fact that different families, they have different values, and so it is best done in the home, where you teach your child what you believe in, because like you're saying, some Christians are not even that mature, and they may subscribe to LGBT, for instance, and that's what they want to teach their child. I wouldn't want maybe such a teacher to even teach my child because I don't subscribe to it. So it means that I have to take the responsibility and then do that in my own home. It's all been well taken. Thank you very much. It's been very engaging. And I think that for the children that Dr. Angela keeps on talking about, children who don't have the privilege to live in homes and families like maybe many of us do because we have access to internet and all that. I think they are exposed to pornography in the home. Like you rightly said, it may not be typical pornography because this is happening between two married people and they are exposed to it, right? But the problem is the exposure to explicit scenes, okay? It's the exposure that affects them. And so yes, it may not be pornography. And I think that even not just those children, all of us, there are so many things that we do have had to a few times tell my friends, no, look, when your child turns almost a year, I mean from 7 months, you better watch what you do in the presence of the child. Because you think the child is that young, 7 months. Say, hey, what does a 7-month child know? What does a 1-year child know? What does a 2-year-old child know? But then they see all these things and they even act it out because at that age, they start learning how to imitate, you know, and then you continue to expose the child because you think the child doesn't know anything. So even some of these things, talking about the internet is far-fetched, right, in our homes. What are we exposing our children to? Is your 5-year-old daughter saying your private part because you are the father? So it's okay, which is what happens. Okay, so that point is very, very valid. Are we exposing ourselves to our children? If private parts are private, then let's teach them that it is private. And I like the example Dr. Banka gave, even about even bathing the child and not sticking your finger there and saying, do it yourself because it's private. I'm not going to touch it. I mean, imagine if you're the mother and you show such a respect to your child. Then your child is going to learn very early that it's about respecting your body and respecting the bodies of other people. I think that's where those who make pornography get it wrong because they are trying to devalue sex and tell us that sex is everywhere, it's okay, and it doesn't matter even if you don't respect your body or respect the other person's body. And so that's one of the messages that we want to be very clear when we talk to our children, letting them understand that you have to respect your body, you have to respect the other person's body, and you have to make sure that nobody violates your body, and you have to make sure that you protect other people's bodies as well. And imagine we're all giving our children this kind of message. I believe that a lot of these predators will not have any job to do. ACP Reverend, this is in your court too. So the church, what is the church doing about these things?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Mothers are taxed in the church. I believe strongly that is why the Women Fellowship actually comes up. A lot of the Women Fellowship engages specialists to educate us because like a doctor said, some of us are ignorant about a few things. So when we get a specialist to educate the mothers on that front, then they are also able to disseminate it to their children. So most of the time in the churches, the women's program, the child's program are what actually complement for that. And I believe that in our front, we have children's Sunday schools, the youth, the young adults, so that will be enough though. But the church is also trying, so we should all carry on. But one thing I want to add is that in as much as we talk about all these children who are vulnerable out there, we should consider the children or the persons with disability, a very vulnerable group. They may not have any voice, but much as we are there, like Dr. Angela said, we can cover them all up. Let's mentor them. Let's bring them on board. If you see anything going on with any person with disability, they are vulnerable in the first place. Let's support them. And let's also ensure that one big word that we use when it comes to the abuse world is trauma. Once our children go through some of these things and they are traumatized, that is not a fine for to say. It is just punishment, and punishment when it comes to sexual abuses. Rape, 7 to 25 years imprisonment, defilement, the same. So we should be very careful what we teach our children, so they know that when you even violate the law, there is a certain punishment. And to avoid the punishment, let us parents take up our role to befriend, like I always say, let's befriend our children. Let's go outside the box, extended family system. Let's support everybody. And then we'll begin to see another new beautiful generation coming up to replace us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you very much. I think one of the things that you said that has hit me very hard in this meeting is that you tell your children that you cannot be in the same sex business with them. That you are they're under your roof, and you are in the business, and they also want to be in it. No, I love that. But before we take Dr. Barker's take-home message, I think Aldi has shared with us a video that we should all see. You can actually search it. Fight the new drug. He's given us a link there, and it's actually a move. It's actually a video. So if you cannot talk to your child, your adolescent, about these issues just yet, you can start by showing the video, watch the video with the child, and then let the discussion come up from there. I think that the other materials that by the time Dr. Banker finishes, I'll share with you as well that you can have a look at. So Dr. Banker, what's your take-home message on this?
Yeah, thank you very much. But my take-home message is that let's talk to our children. Let's be careful about what they are seeing on the internet. Once we talk to them and they understand what their bodies are, how to respect their bodies, not showing it to everybody else, how they should cover themselves, how they shouldn't allow anyone to touch them, it will go a long way. And also to discuss, because sometimes one of the things too is that we talk about, for example, LGBTQ being out there. Well, it's in society, and you can't go and change society and the whole world. You can start by talking to your kids and impacting your values into your child. So my take-home message is that let's work on that. Let's have time for our children. Let's observe them. Let's listen to them, and let's also look at them. Let's allow them to come to us and feel free to share anything that they want with us. So that is my take-home message.
Thank you very much. So we've said that we should teach our children about their private parts. We should teach them the name. I've heard a story where the mother told the child that the penis is called sausage, and there was an uncle coming to the house and putting the penis into the child's mouth, and the child would tell the mother, "Daddy gave me sausage," and it took a lot for the mother to eventually find out that it wasn't edible sausage. The child was being abused. So we need to teach them the names of the body parts just as they are. We need to teach them about boundaries. The private parts are private. No one should see, no one should talk, no one should take pictures of them. We need to teach our children how to get out of scary or uncomfortable situations. Okay, they need to have go-to persons. It could be a mentor, of course, same sex, that somebody that child trusts. We say that if you have a problem, go to this uncle. If you can't tell me, you tell this person, tell that person. At least there should be 5 such people in the child's life that the child can talk about any kind of thing and can ask questions as well. Then we need to encourage them to speak up. This is very important, okay? Because a lot of abusers tell the children to keep it a secret. So you need to let them understand that there are no secrets when it comes to body parts. There are no secrets with mom and dad, and that's very important. I use that to bait my children a lot. When I see that they're trying to hide something from me, it doesn't matter whatever thing it is, but I remind them that there are no secrets, and it works because they know that we've agreed on that, and they have to fulfill their part of the deal. So let's not be too embarrassed about this issue. Let's not be too embarrassed about this subject. Let's not be afraid, because the price to pay, your fear cannot take care of it. Your fear alone is so small if you think about the price that has to be paid if you avoid this subject altogether. So it's been great. We've learned about the smarts. We've learned about consent. We've actually talked about adolescent behavior and how pornography is accidental, and so we need to arm the children with knowledge before they run into this accident. And when they do, they know that they've already been armed with what to do, and so they can navigate their way, manage it well. I said in the opening statement that a lot of people who have actually gotten themselves trapped in pornography talk about the fact that it's so hard to break away from it. It's so hard that you think that you could never even be free from it. Yesterday, somebody sent me a message and said, "Thank you very much for this program. I was introduced to porn very early, and I'm telling you, I've struggled to come out of it." We talked about relationship with our children, so we need to keep a relationship where they can open up to us. We talked about juveniles, and we said that I didn't even know that the cutoff age is 12 years. So I know what to do next time the child is older than 12 years at least. It shouldn't just pass or be swept under the carpet. And Dr. Banka made it very clear that too many times we say enyeshwe, 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 but then the children are being traumatized. They are becoming depressed. They are becoming anxious. We saw that child who was actually committed suicide. You know, their grades deteriorate, all sorts of things, and then they go up to abuse other children. Let's get that very clear, that children who are abused are likely, very, very, very likely to abuse other children later in life. And Dr. Angela put it out that children who actually watch pornography are 6 times likely to be violent or to commit sexual violence against others. And so I think that we've all agreed that parents need to learn. We need to learn so we can educate ourselves, educate our children. Because how can you give what you don't have? And I think the problem is most of us were not taught at home. Our mothers didn't talk about this with us. Now, how do you talk about it with your child? I think that we are able to talk about it because we've navigated in that area, and this is what we do. We need to tell our children that pornography is a fantasy. It's not a reality. It's just a fantasy. And I listened to a man of God who said, look, you're deceiving yourself if you watch porn, because nobody goes to find their wife on the bed in high heels or in lipstick in a week. So when you go to see your wife is in a scarf, and that's the reality. And that makes sense in real life. In real life, this is what it is. And so we talked about being observant to notice changes in the adolescents. I think one of the things that we didn't also talk about is that people who watch porn are very guilt-ridden. They live a life of shame, and you don't want your child to grow up guilt-ridden and in shame, because that has very, very, very serious long-term consequences in adulthood. That's when they are not able to relate well with people. And life is about people. I mean, your net worth is your network. So everything that we can do to protect our children from being damaged mentally, we need to do. So that pornography also rewires the brain and makes people behave like children, because it makes you always look for more. You want a reward, you want to be satisfied, and it gets to a point that nothing can satisfy you anymore. You become like a child, because children never have enough of anything, and that's unfortunate. And so, having said all these things, we need to keep an eye also on what they are watching online. And I like you to go to YouTube, look for our discussion. We had 2 discussions right here in this meeting earlier in the year, how not to lose your child to social media and online vices. And we actually had an expert teaching us how to control what our children are watching on the, on Windows, on the Apple products, on the Android products. It's all there, how to manage their screen time. And I'm happy that I learned all those things, and I use it in my home. I give my children 3 hours every day, and that's okay. If I have to do more, it means that you really need it so that they can do other things, because otherwise they're not even going out to play. They're not even running around. And then it comes to that tender issue of obesity. Okay, so parents, we have a lot of work to do. I trust that you've been blessed by this discussion today. We'll come your way again in January with a discussion on back to school preparation. How do we prepare our children as they go back to school? Thank you very much for coming. On that note, I'd like to ask ACP Reverend to share in the prayer with us. But before you do, thank you very much, our panelists, Dr. Banka, ACP Reverend, Dr. Angela. I think Dr. Angela has dropped at the point. We are so grateful. This issue, we cannot talk about it in one meeting. I believe that we'll come back again sometime next year to continue. But on this note, thank you very much, Mr. Nyakutete, Auntie Joyce, Odame, Aldi, everybody else, Miss Kalamos, all your contributions. Very grateful. Let's take our closing prayer.